All right, today's devotion I think is a bit of an interesting one. We're still walking through the large commandment and the looks in the large commandment at the large catechism and the looks therein at the Ten Commandments. And the seventh commandment that we're going to talk about today is you are not to steal, or you shall not steal. And it's defined first here: for to steal is nothing else than to acquire someone's property by unjust means. Now I think that's an important definition. It's important to think about because there's the stealing when you talk about stealing, at least what I picture is something like a bank robbery or a cat burglar kind of thing, where you are by force or else, or kind of by subterfuge, by sneakiness, you're taking something that doesn't belong to you, right? In the instance of a bank, you're breaking in, you're taking money that's not yours, and in the instance of a cat burglar, you're breaking into someone's house and you're taking something that's not yours. And we would pretty quickly say both of those are stealing. But what is interesting here is when you say acquire someone else's property by unjust means, this includes taking advantage of someone by lying to them or by being creative with the truth. And this is a two-edged sword. So the first one, and I don't think a lot of us are maybe going to fall into this category, but he says, I say this about artisans, workers, and day laborers who act high-handedly and never know enough ways to overcharge people, and yet are careless and unreliable in their work. Okay, so charging someone for a good or a service and then not following through or not living up to the quality of work that is expected, that is, you are acquiring someone else's property by unjust means. You are taking their money and not giving them what you promised. And this applies to a couple things. There's the stereotype, or I guess there's the trope that a mechanic is going to always charge you a lot more than you actually owe for whatever needs to be done, and they're going to charge you for things that don't even really need to be done. And in instances where that is the case, right, we would call that stealing. For example, I at one point had a mechanic he told me I needed a fluid changed in my car. My car doesn't actually have the fluid that he wanted to change. I forget what specific system he was offering to change the fluid on, but in my car, it's done electronically. It's not done hydraulically anymore. So he was trying to sell me something that did not exist. Okay, that would have been stealing. Now, I have to say, I think this stereotype is a little bit overplayed. A lot of the mechanics I have dealt with have been fairly honest and straightforward. Like we go to the Firestone right on the corner near our house, and they have never done anything but treat us fairly, and been very honest with the work that needs done, etc. Anyway, moving on. But there's a flip side to this, because I think a lot of us we're more often in the consumer role than we are in the producer role. So we're quick to point out and say, you're right, they're swindlers. But he says also, taking advantage of someone in the market, in stores, butcher shops, wine and beer sellers, workshops, in short, wherever business is transacted and money is exchanged for goods and services. So if you are doing your best to not pay your full bill, if you will do anything for a discount, right, you're treading a line here. If you're willing to take advantage of loopholes in a system to get things cheaper than they're actually intended to be sold for, you're treading this line, and you're on the wrong side of this line if you found a loophole, and because what you're doing is you are acquiring someone else's property by unjust means. So this, you are not to steal, it applies to the glaringly obvious, but I think it also applies to how we engage, how we purport ourselves, how we engage with business transactions in general. So, interesting to think about, at least, from my perspective. If you have comments, questions, concerns, as always, put them below. And regardless, brothers and sisters, go in peace. Serve the Lord. Thanks be to God.